All right, welcome back to Indie Power. We've got a special guest. You know him. He's been ripping it up for a while. He's got a brand new single, wants to talk about that in the upcoming album. The Lone Wolf himself, please welcome Tommy VEXT.
What's going on, Jay? Thanks for having me.
I see you crisscrossing across the country here. So
I am.
I remember a few years ago hanging out with you backstage at the Aftershock Festival in Sacramento. What your boys Five Finger were up there. I don't know if they had you on deck in case Ivan had a problem or what.
I think I was Aftershock was 2017, right?
Something like that.
Yeah. 9 Inch Nails played that year too. It was a good one. I saw Run the Jewels. But yeah, I was traveling with Five Finger, just kind of being a sober coach guy for the homie.
Okay.
But yeah.
Well, yeah, man, it's good to see Ivan pulled through. Looking forward to seeing their next show and album. They're definitely an inspiration to us all.
Yeah,
let's talk a little bit, because I know you originally come from Brooklyn, but you live all over the place now. What do you think it was about that New York upbringing and that hardcore scene that helped kind of shape you into the guy you are today?
I mean, I think New York in the 80s and 90s, like I cut my teeth in CBGBs and places like the Continental. I played my first show at CBGBs when I was 14. I had to get a fake ID just to be allowed in the building. So it was just very real. I come from a culture of keep it real, and I come from the original all-inclusive culture, which is the hardcore, metalcore, punk culture. It's like people of every race, every color, every ethnicity, like whatever, as long as you're here, your family, kind of like the hardcore Olive Garden mentality, so to speak. And I don't know. I just I definitely came from humble beginnings. I definitely came from a lot of violence and negativity and drugs and stuff. That was kind of the environment I was raised, I grew up in. And, I just think that when you grow up without safety and you grow up without security, things are very real. And so you become real because your life experiences are real. And so it's definitely a good meter for measuring, the appraisal of what's important, what's valuable. And so, I think that it definitely had a huge impact on me. And then I wound up moving to Los Angeles in my early 20s, which is almost the complete antithesis psychologically of that realness. Like almost everything in LA is completely fraudulent. And I didn't really find my people in California until I got sober. And then I found like these really like diehard, recovery guys who used to be addicts and alcoholics and had changed their whole life around, and they helped me change my whole life around. So I gravitate towards where the realness is.
Yeah. Well, I know growing up, a lot of partying, a lot of drinking, a lot of pills and chemicals was just part of the way of life. But coming through and being sober is, I know you got more of a handle on your life, and you see so many artists that either went off the deep end or almost went off the end and saved themselves. And these days you realize the real party is on stage. It's that energy on stage. You don't need to, obliterate your brain and your life, off stage. So it's exciting to see that you can still rock as hard and be sober. Now, yeah. Talk a little bit about, obviously you saw growing up in New York, the rise of hip hop. And I try and tell some of these younger people that hip hop came up through punk rock and the streets. A lot of people think it came in through black music and R&B. No, they hated hip hop. They thought it was a threat to their existence. It literally came up through the alternative world and coexisted. That punk rock ethic is in those founding fathers hip hop. Did you feel that?
Well, I think, obviously coming from Brooklyn, the Bronx, the boogie down Bronx was kind of where the birthplace of hip hop. And, you know, it just kind of spread. So there was no, I was born in 1982. So by the time I was like actually, being around, there was no escaping it. We had some of the biggest legacy hip hop artists in the world came from New York, from, Busta Rhymes to Biggie Smalls, the Wu-Tang Clan. And that was more like my era, and then we know, the West Coast had NWA and Tupac and, then you have even before that, like Grandmaster Flash and, artists like Public Enemy. And I don't know so much if it was split down the middle with like the punk scene and the hardcore scene. I think it blended more along the lines of the mid to late 90s. I think you had, in the 90s, you had artists that were doing things together like Onyx and Biohazard, right? And Biohazard, for all intents and purposes, could be considered, one of the first rap metal bands, if you exclude Bad Brains, which is Bad Brains is kind of they kind of created their own genre of music. But yeah, I think that part of the art culture in New York during the 80s and 90s were, one, everybody was poor, so it was affordable to live there. You could, bands like Metallica and Anthrax were moving to New York City and doing their thing, and living in these like, rundown shacks and squat houses. And so, because artists are usually poor, especially good ones, and it all kind of intermixed in the urban setting. And so it was a natural evolution for, that bands like Candiria that never really really got popular, or bands like E-Town Concrete that were complete hybrids of hip hop culture and hardcore and heavy metal in the same music genre. And that kind of is where I got my roots from. That's where I got my start. So by the time I was making records in 1996 throughout the early 2000s, that was kind of what was going on. And then when I moved to California, I joined a sort of melodic death metal band called Divine Heresy. And then I'd adopt a whole other kind of culture where I was always influenced by bands like Pantera and Fear Factory and Slayer and Metallica. I got exposed to, more black metal, death metal, when I was in my early years in LA, and integrating those styles into the band that I was in. And yeah, I think that's kind of like, my musical journey as a vocalist has been, I've been in so many different kinds of bands, from, Divine Heresy to Snot to, Bad Wolves, and obviously filling in for Five Finger Death Punch and doing all my old school hardcore bands, and, and then to the current, what's coming out now is kind of like, I think my new record is a culmination of all the back catalog of everything I've learned creatively, and trying to, make everything cohesive into one sound, which is what I was trying to fortify with Bad Wolves, but couldn't because there were some creative differences that I no longer have to deal with.
Yeah, well, like on your new single, Trust the Science, you got Topher on there, rapping to begin with it before you come slamming in. Tell us about Topher and why he was the perfect guy for this single.
Well, Topher and I wanted to work together for a while. I got to know him. He was very, he's an ex-military guy. He served his country, and he's an independent hip hop artist who has been very vocal about his political beliefs. And so, I kind of started to seek him out through that. And then I started listening to his music, and we touched base, and, we had mutual admiration for each other. I was actually, when I was still in Bad Wolves, I had intended on being a part of one of his songs. But then the whole drama went down, and I got locked up, and I was contractually kind of stuck for almost a year. And so when all that ended, when all the lawsuits got settled, I was like, hey, I got this song, and I think it's right up your alley. And so I sent it to him, and he sent it back, and I was like, woo, let's go. And that was it.
Yeah, well, it's a super intense video. Tell us about the location, where you shot it, and who's the director, who helped you get that look.
Well, the Austin Schwarzberg is directed this video and three others that'll be coming out. He came out on tour with us. He's done a lot of the live stuff that you see us post on social media. And basically we had a show in Nashville and then a day off. And during the day off, we pulled the bus into this film studio and we rented all these different rooms. And basically, I mean, I kind of put it all together as we got there. You know, we did a walkthrough and we saw what rooms were available. And then I was like, okay, we're going to do this, 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 and this. And then we'll do a live performance here. And, you know, the tour manager, actually, we didn't have extras. So my tour manager is actually Dean, who was being yelled at by Topher, taped up in the chair. And then the nurse in the video is Dusty, my guitar player's wife, who happened to be visiting on tour. And so we were like, hey, can you just jump in this video? So we kind of all did it with a very low budget. And everybody in the crew, like my sound guy did playback and my lighting guy did the lights, and you know, and our assistant helped, and everyone just kind of helped move the gear and do all the stuff, and we just got it done. And that's kind of how we did all the videos. There's another video coming out this year that we shot in New York City that's about my attempted suicide when I attempted to jump in front of a train when I hit a real low point that I've talked about a lot. And it's an anti-suicide song. And we went literally throughout, you know, Grand Central Station and Times Square and filmed, you know, these places where I actually experienced the deepest suicidal depression of my entire life. And to be able to go back and put these things together, you know, I think I've since Bad Wolf started, my vision, because the lyrics were always so personal and they were autobiographical, the struggle was always to try to find a way to make the videos tell a story, because these are like life stories. And so we did that with songs like Remember When and songs like Sober. And I'm going to continue to do that, because I think the things that I'm talking about are very important. And I think anytime an artist is honest and truthful about the human experience, it's going to resonate with people. And, you know, where you have a song like Trust the Science, which is, you know, basically it was born out of resentment for what happened to the nurses and the first responders who were terminated for not getting the vaccine. And, you know, you look at what all these people went through and what they did in the height of the pandemic, where they all could have died and no one knew exactly how dangerous things were. And 18 months later, these heroes were literally discarded like rinds on fruit, like, we don't need you anymore. And it will go down in history as one of the most unconscionably disgraceful acts that our government has done to its own people. And, you know, and so, you know, that's where the song came from, you know, and people should not be, you know, and I'm not like anti-vax or pro-vax. My main point is always that people should have a choice. My point is always that if you have an opinion, we have a First Amendment for a reason. And we're living in a time where we're seeing censorship. The censorship is so unchecked. It's reminiscent of, you know, pre-Holocaust Germany, where you're seeing the media being completely controlled and social media be completely controlling dissenting voices and not allowing anyone to express question. And it's not so much if people don't want to talk about opinions, because everyone has an opinion. Opinions are like assholes. Everyone's got one, they all stink. But when you're not allowed to question the efficacy of experimental drugs, and you're not allowed to question the intentions or the motives of politicians and large, you know, massive corporations, we have a very serious problem, a very, very serious problem. And I think humanity is starting to wake up from it, because, you know, I have been talking about this stuff, you know, anyone who knows me or knows my bands, I've been talking about this kind of stuff in my lyrics for 20 years. So when everyone kind of was like, I can't believe Tommy Vext is questioning, I'm always questioning. You know, I got kind of lambasted and painted as a right-wing extremist or conspiracy theorist But I've been an anti-government person my whole life. I mean, that's what punk rock is. Punk rock is anti-establishment. Metal is anti-establishment. You know, hip hop used to be the language of the proletariat. It was poetry for, you know, the African American community, which was poor. You know, and it was talking about their life experiences, and that's what great art is supposed to be. We're supposed to be honest. You know, there's so many songs that never would have gotten made if they came out in 2020 to now. You know, Zombie, Dolores wrote that song as a protest anthem about the bombing and the IRA bombing in Warrington at a factory where 2 little kids got killed. That's highly political. They would never be allowed to release a song like that now because you're not allowed to question anything. Billy Joel, We Didn't Start the Fire. Go read those lyrics. That song would never be allowed to come out today, you know? And so, you know, even despite, you know, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this song because it came out on Friday and debuted at #2 on the rock charts on iTunes, right? And that's behind Tool. So the top 4 songs on iTunes is from Tool, which is, they re-released Opiate, which is a classic Tool song from their first album, Nirvana, Something in the Way, and that's getting a refresh because it's in the new Batman movie, and AC/DC, and me. And it shows you that, you know, people who love rock music, they're not buying new rock music because these new rock artists and new rock songs, they're so controlled by the record labels and this hyper corporatization of the music industry has taken the voices away from artists who might even want to say something, but they're too afraid to be canceled. And they tried to make an example out of me, you know, and again, I am a multi-platinum selling recording artist. And I've played arenas all over the globe. And I have I technically have 6 #1 hits. I didn't sing in the last one, but I wrote those songs. You know what I mean? I was you know, and on every single #1 song that I have had on radio, no one in my former band played on. They didn't play on the recordings. They didn't write them. They didn't have anything to do with it. And that doesn't, you know, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You know, it actually is more of a threat, and they have to get rid of people like me even more so because they don't like what I'm saying. I'm questioning things, you know, and I think that it started out with, I don't know if you hear the puppy playing with the squeaky toy in the background. It started with, you know, Orange Man Bad and anti-Trump. And, you know, I think there's a major misconception with the way the media has portrayed me as this like far right person, because, you know, there are things that I believe in that have conservative values to them. I believe in personal responsibility. You know, I believe that you're responsible for yourself. I don't like the idea of socialism and communism because it's never worked and it's insane. And it's a trap. You know, it's like a mouse dies in a mouse trap because it doesn't understand why the cheese is free. And the same is true with humans and communism. And so, but then when it comes to things like a woman's right to choose, I believe a woman has a right to choose. I don't believe that abortion should be illegal. To me, that's insane. So for most people who have, you know, oscillating views on different topics, who used to be found in a moderate position, we've been forced into different directions to choose sides. And the radicalization and the polarization of politics in America is going to destroy this country. You know, it's destroyed my band. You know, it destroys relationships with people. I know people who have gotten divorced over this stuff. I know families that don't talk to each other anymore. For what? For a bunch of politicians, they don't care about us. They care about their careers. They care about their agendas. And we have allowed social media and the media and the cause heads to make a religion out of politics. And that should not be.
Yeah, there's no question. You know, the punk rock ethic definitely says, you know, have an open mind. I mean, be yourself, do for self. But I'm super impressed that you stand up, for getting sober and anti-suicide, and what a better, vocal for it, being that you've dealt with these issues, because we see suicide on the rise. We see the opiate problem, and so much among the youth. They almost like they don't have a future, and they turn to stuff like that. So I think it's a great thing that you do on that, and we can't wait to hear more of this album. What can we expect, with other songs on this record?
Well, I mean, the album's called Grand Theft Audio because the album was almost stolen from me. So, ironically enough, the album is going to be very, very well rounded. We're going to talk about, uh, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff. There's songs that are. There's a great song that's called "What America Meant to Me," and it's about coming to the realization of everything that we take for granted. And that as we slowly begin, at the process of the politicians and these, corporate, almost, they're so powerful, they're almost like independent nations, these massive corporations, they're slowly eroding our rights and our freedoms. And as we lose them bit by bit, you start to realize how good we had it. And it's almost like, is it too late to get this back? How do we get a handle on this? And then there's songs like, there's a song about cancel culture called "The King," and it basically illustrates everything that I went through, and how I was threatened and this, that, the other. And, I'm someone who most anybody who knows about the song "Remember When" from Bad Wolves is like, I was murdered. I literally was murdered by my twin brother, and had to like fight to survive and learn how to walk again. And I've overdosed on drugs, and I've had to bury a child. Like, my life has not been, it just hasn't been rainbows and unicorns. And so everything I do and say comes from a very real place. And it's hard to intimidate and abuse someone who has had everything already taken away from them and been given back. There's songs that talk about the divide in the country, and how, sometimes you have to lean into spirituality so that you're not reactive, and so that you don't give in to the dark side of what's going on, because it's easy to lose, to get wrapped up, and we can get addicted into these cycles of being upset about things that we can't control. And the only way that I find peace is by turning these things over to God. And, so these are all concepts and ideas that I would be deterred from talking about if I was on some major label, because of the censorship going on and the in-house kind of forbidden things. It's like Kanye West said, like, they don't want you talking about Jesus, or they don't want you talking about faith in songs. They want you to push out the same meaningless bullshit. And that's it, because they don't want to. I think that there's fear of consequence by invoking communication and thought. And even in 2020, I was the most covered rock artist in the world. Like, there's more shit talking articles, but when you read the comments, it's 50-50 split. And so just, that's the power of every individual person. Just by having the courage to say, hey, I think this and I feel like that, even if they attack you, what is happening is for the greater good. You're opening dialogue where other people feel powerless to start the conversation. And the only way that our country is going to heal is if we talk to each other. We have different opinions and talk to each other. I was just on a podcast with Hawk Newsom, him and his sister are the founders of BLM. And there are two different Black Lives Matters. There's a grassroots organization that's trying to heal their communities and raise money and awareness to do work to reteach the youth, and give them a sense of healing and help them compete in the world. And then there's a corporation that has used the name and hijacked it and then stolen tens of millions of dollars and put it towards the Democratic political campaigns. And so when I called that stuff out in 2020 and I did this marker video and it was like sacrilege. And then I just was, 2 years later, I'm on a podcast with the guy who started the foundation and knows who I am and saw that video and agrees with everything that I said. So the difference between conspiracy theory and the truth is about 18 months.
Yeah, that's powerful. And I know you appreciate, like I say, years ago, you almost had to be on a major label to get in the stores or try to get to radio and all that. And now you have the power of the independents, which has leveled the playing field. And the music lovers out there, they don't care what label you're on. They just care if they like or don't like your music. But, they almost root for the underdog more, and it's exciting that you're able to go out there and speak your truth and do your thing and not be censored.
I mean, I think that everybody should. I think that, it's like I've been for years, we play shows and, we had, in battles, we're like making the crowd jump and having mosh pits and like all this stuff. But, there's parts where I would stop the show and I'd ask everybody to raise their hands, in the crowd. And we'd be opening for Five Finger or Megadeth or whatever. And there's, 20,000 people in the audience. And I was like, if you came to the show with someone that you love, I want you to turn to that person right now and give them a hug and tell them that you love them. And, that is something that, as somebody who has lost people that they love, those are the best memories I have. I've lost a lot of people. I've lost people to overdose. I've lost people, for a number of reasons. And some of the best memories that we made were like being in the crowd at a Pantera show, and it's like, hey, we're like, it's very important that on a regular basis, we touch base with the things that are important, because a lot of people are getting wrapped up in the divide of what the media and social media is doing to us. And we are forfeiting our bonds. There are people who are, bands breaking up, people not talking to each other, people getting divorced, families not talking to family members, best friends never speaking again. Over what? That's not what this is. That's not what this country is about. That's not what humanity is about.
Yeah. Period to that. Let's get back to, one people, one world. Well, our special guest has been Tommy VEXT. You know him. He's the Lone Wolf. Trust the Science is the new single and video. Check that out. Featuring Topher and Grand Theft Audio, the album coming soon. Tommy, always a pleasure, man. Look forward to charting your course and being behind you as this album rolls out, man. Safe travels and look forward to our next conversation.
Thanks, Jay. I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, man. We'll talk.